Hello, everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. Not Mary. The unnerving chorus of cutlery scraping porcelain echoed throughout the room. Tension hung thick in the air, palpable enough to reach up and slice into it with my steak knife. Beside me, my sister sniffed. From my periphery, I could see her red-rimmed eyes staring blankly at her untouched plate. I cut into the slab before me, crimson juices forming a greasy puddle. I took a bite, relished the tenderness. The peas encroached into the sea of mashed potatoes like invading soldiers. "Would you please pass the potatoes, Mary?" Mother asked from the other end of the table. I nodded, heaving the dish over to my sister to pass on. Her gaze remained fixed on her plate as she sat on both hands, legs trembling. A small, choked sob escaped from her lips. "That's quite enough, Leah," Father growled, stabbing into his own steak. Leah shakily grasped the bowl, ushering it to Mother. Between them sat Jonah, barely peeking over the edge of the table and pushing his food about. At the tender age of 5, he was blissfully ignorant. I chewed a bit of gristle in the next bite, watching Father's brow furrow as he took a sip of wine, a rogue tendril staining his snowy beard burgundy. He cleared his throat, an action which rendered the table still, waiting with bated breath. Children, the ultimate test is almost upon us. I hated the way he spoke, like that of an old novel. Mother rested a bony hand over his and listened intently. With her other hand, she fingered the gold cross hanging from her neck. "We will not let the enemy destroy our union. We will not succumb to their devilish tendencies, for they are blind to the ways in which we serve him. They will never know such unwavering love and loyalty, and for that, I pity them." Mother nodded in understanding, her silvery bun bobbing. Father tossed his napkin over his plate and stood, chair screeching dully on concrete. We watched as he climbed the nearby staircase. Stray spots of maroon that had earlier leached into the wood marked his steps, evidence of what he'd done to protect the sanctity of his family. There was once a time when I would have chased after him, lunging for the open door, yearning for sunlight, but the scar on the back of my head itched like an ugly deterrent. I made it a point to constantly remind myself of who I was, where I came from. Fragments of memories, the way my mother used to rub my back in the morning when she woke me for school, the sound of my father's work shoes on the hardwood floors every evening, the hum of the fish tank in my childhood bedroom remained filed away in the depths of my mind, growing fuzzier with each passing day. But I dared not speak of these memories. They were mine and only mine. Leah, now gangly and naive in the throes of adolescence, was more pliable. I imagined she couldn't even recall things like the details of her mother's face or the way it felt to ride a school bus. When Mother and Father told her something, she accepted it at face value. And Jonah, in all his cherubic innocence, had never known another life. The harsh fluorescents were his sun and moon, every day the same. Sometimes it made me want to weep, but then I reminded myself he knew no different. Perhaps it was better that way. Father's thunderous descent broke my thoughts. Mother stood at his approach, collecting some of the equipment he came bearing. As he laid a piece before each of us, the breath caught in my throat. My eyes followed the transition from dark metal into laminated wood that led down to an unmistakable component, a trigger. Out of the children, only I knew how to operate a gun. When I was 8 years old, my father took me hunting for the first time. I recalled the way the cold seeped into my fingers and toes as we waited for hours. We flinched at any flicker of movement, which often turned out to be a rummaging squirrel. But then he arrived. Statuesque and bristled, his sinewy figure strutted into the open field, unaware of his armed audience. His antlers were a thorny crown that dipped with him as he scoured the earth. "Take the shot," my father egged, helping me hold the heavy rifle. We'd gone over the process an umpteen amount of times, but now the steely grip felt wrong. I dropped my shoulder, finger slipping from the trigger as the barrel slung towards the ceiling of the tree stand, and my father cursed. That was the first time my father swore in front of me. In one swift motion, he grabbed the gun, took aim, and fired. I covered my ears and watched in silent horror as the creature's body quivered with the impact. His legs buckled, and he scrambled for a brief moment before taking off, blood spilling from his flank. My father took my shoulders in his hands and kneeled square before me. "You don't ever let the gun drop like that, especially with the safety off," he scolded. Hot tears coursed down my cheeks, stinging the wind-chapped skin. My father profusely apologized for swearing and raising his voice, wrapping me in a hug. But I wasn't crying because he yelled. I kept replaying the look of sheer panic as the bullet ripped through the deer's flesh, the terror and confusion he must have felt. We trailed our victim for a short while, following the blood-stained leaves of early winter. He didn't make it far, having collapsed in a small clearing. Panting laboriously, his onyx eyes stared up in blank defeat, and I saw myself in their reflection. Before I could process the scene, another shot rang out, and the deer stilled. "A kill shot," my father explained, "to end his suffering. When you see the enemy, you take the shot," Father said then, breaking my trance. I was back in my chair, staring down at the weapon before me. Leah ran a trembling finger over the safety, ensuring it was on per Father's crash course. Jonah, too small to wield such a device, was given a knife instead. Never before had we been permitted to use any kind of weaponry. Anything more than a butter knife was forbidden. Father and Mother claimed it was for our own safety, but I knew better. And that didn't stop me from fantasizing a ballpoint pen embedded in a windpipe, a broken bedpost as a club to the head. I'd had my fair share of time to ponder the possibilities. Leah and Jonah may have been taken at malleable ages, but I refused to fully yield. The slight quiver in Father's hands and the way Mother's complexion paled meant it was all hands on deck. Though I didn't know whose blood painted the staircase, sticky on the soles of Father's shoes, it had led us to such a cataclysm that I dared to dream about life beyond the concrete. I yearned to return to a world where my name was my own, not the one I'd been forced to adopt. I longed to hug my mother and father, to bask in the sunlight on a summer day, to see my friends, to witness the light at the end of a nearly decade-long tunnel. Could this be the end? The gunmetal was cool in my clammy palms. I contemplated aiming it at Father or at Mother. It would be so easy. But what if it wasn't loaded? What if it was just for show? And could I really do it? "Let us go," Father commanded, leading our ragtag troop up the stairs. At the top, Father unlatched the door, leading us into an empty hall with another door at its opposing end. Bringing up the rear, I glanced back into the abyss where time passed indefinitely, and as the next door opened into a moonlit room, I realized I would never allow myself to return. Gilded crosses glinted from every wall as we wound through the house, and like something from a movie, a muffled voice seeped in through the cracks in the windows and doors. "Come out with your hands up." "Father," Leah croaked. "Who is that?" Father ignored her, the click of his safety flipping off. He slung the gun around his back, nodding at Mother as he approached the door. The rush of blood thrummed in my ears. Leah mimicked Father and switched her safety off, and Mother did the same. Greasy coils of nausea knotted my gut as I followed their lead. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. Nothing about the unfolding situation felt good or right or godly. Father gripped the doorknob with a fierceness and turned. Golden porch light flooded the entryway. For a moment, Father's face looked younger in the warm glow, and I wondered what led him to this path in life. Slowly, he raised his hands above his head and stepped outside. "Drop your weapon!" an extraneous voice shouted. "It's over, Arthur," another called. "Do the right thing and drop your weapon." "I'm afraid I can't do that," Father replied simply, as if he were declining an invitation to a party. "Your godlessness is a stain on this earth, and I have to protect my family from such evil. I can't let you destroy the Lord's work. You think you can interfere with his plan?" Disconcerted grumbles echoed as a reply. "Dear?" Father called. Mother, gun cradled in her arms, crept to his side. Her skin was sallow, brow damp with prickles of sweat. The woman, always so composed, seemed to be cracking. "Mrs. Goodfellow, drop your weapon now," the second voice commanded. Tensions heightened with each passing second. "Put down your weapon and put your hands up." Negotiations persisted, but I knew Mother was as stubborn as a mule and loyal as a dog. She would follow Father to the ends of the earth. The crunch of boots on gravel drew near. Father stiffened. "Not another step," he threatened, raising his gun. "Don't turn this into a standoff, Arthur," the voice urged. "That's not going to do either of us any good." A treacherous moment of silence ticked by. Every part of me trembled. "I will not let you tear this family apart," Father declared coldly. "Maud," he said, nodding at Mother, who lifted her gun. Her finger made contact with the trigger, and she pulled. A deafening blast ripped through the cool night air, and all hell broke loose. Shouts of anger and bewilderment erupted, and I watched as Mother's body lurched back in a swarm of bullets. In collapsing, her gun fired. I fell to the floor, covering the important parts of myself. Father crawled lamely over the threshold, dragging Mother's body with him. With a weak kick, he shut and locked the door. Blood from their matching wounds seeped into the floor, a crimson trail smeared behind them. Amidst the chaos, Father tenderly brushed stray hairs from Mother's face. He caressed her cheek in his calloused hand as she gasped for air, her blouse soaked through and the cross dangling from her neck now stained. Faint whispers of prayer spilled from his lips as he continued to comfort Mother. Barked orders swirled beyond the window panes, the thud of boots heavy on the porch. From the floor, I glanced around. Jonah was nowhere to be found. "Jonah?" I called quietly. "Leah, Jonah's not." I turned. Leah lay face down nearby, arms splayed by her sides and gun resting under the nearby sofa. "Leah?" On shaking limbs, I clawed my way over to her. Terror gripped my throat so viciously I struggled to breathe. Thick locks of brunette cascaded into the floor, shielding her face from view. I carefully grabbed her shoulder, rolling her over. A strangled cry escaped me as I recoiled at the sight. Blood trickled from her forehead down the bridge of her nose between lifeless eyes. The bile that earlier threatened to purge itself did so then. I wiped my mouth, one last dry heave racking my body, before curling up beside Leah. Garbled whispers across the room caught my attention, and I looked to see Father lying beside Mother, gazing up at the ceiling of the foyer. Though worse for wear, he still managed to recite the Lord's Prayer unfalteringly. Mother remained limp, devoid of life. "Mary?" Father called blindly, like a sick game of Marco Polo. "Mary, child, are you still there?" I rose, stepping gingerly until I stood over top of him. His snowy beard, once stained with wine, was now marred with fatal streaks of maroon. "She's dead," I said solemnly. "Leah's dead." I didn't want to reveal that Mother's gun misfiring was the cause. I wanted him to think it was his fault, which, truthfully, it was. Everything was his fault. Sometimes, we as servants of the Lord must make the ultimate sacrifice. "Shut up," I hissed, jabbing the barrel of my gun into his forehead. Father grew silent for a moment. "Mary, you are a daughter of the one true King," he rasped. "You are our last hope at ending the war of evil that has been waged against us. When you see the enemy, take the shot." I sniffed. "You're right, Father." His breathing was ragged, blood curdling in his lungs as we spoke. A twinge of sorrow panged my heart as I gazed down at the dying man before me. But then I remembered all the hurt he'd inflicted, all the years he'd stolen, and anger sizzled in my veins. Realization flashed across his face. "Mary." A single blast rang out, a kill shot to end his suffering. The footsteps and chatter outside ceased. For a moment, the world was silent. "My name's not Mary," I spat, dropping the gun. With a quick yank, I tore the gold cross from my neck, dropping it onto Father's still chest. A muffled cry emanated from somewhere close by. My heart clenched. "Jonah?" I called, wheeling around in search of the noise. I padded across the living room to the pantry where the cries seemed to stem from. Carefully, I turned the knob and opened the door. Head buried between his knees, Jonah sat curled in a ball. "Jonah." I rubbed his back, and he glanced up. His eyes shone with tears. "Jonah, it's okay. I'm here." Just as the front door splintered open under the crack of a boot, I wrapped him in a hug. Faw family feud. Local missing children discovered in police raid after officer slain. Abducted children found in home of local religious leaders. My name's not Mary. Young woman's fight for survival in House of Horrors. The unbecoming of Belinda Blackwell. There are few places Belinda Blackwell likes to lay down to rest more than upon her husband's chest. He hadn't been expecting her. Belinda hadn't been expecting to be home so soon, either. What with the unpredictability of her father's illness, demanding open schedules from his children, someone on call at all times, lest the old man die without one of them, there to hold his hand. When Oscar had come to join them a week early, something about a case closing timely and a stiffening in his shoulders. When Belinda inquired about her sister-in-law, she pounced on the opportunity to bid her brother and father adieu and return early to the husband she so desperately missed. Finding Etienne still tangled in their bed covers, she had stripped down to her chemise and crawled atop him slowly. He had thrashed hard upon stirring and finding her there, his eyes foggy with confusion and fright. but she had kissed his face and rubbed his arms, whispering, "It's me. It's only me," until he relaxed back into the sheets. Now they rest quietly, teetering on the line between half asleep and half awake, Belinda's ear pressed to Etienne's chest to hear the steady thump, thump, thump of his heart. "Well, I'm glad Oscar will be with him," Etienne says appeasingly, having listened in silence to her stories from London. I think it will do him as much good as father. He seemed like he could use some time away." "Away from what?" "I'm not sure." Belinda plays with a loose thread on Etienne's nightshirt. "I feel bad saying away from his wife, but all signs point to it being the truth. He seemed uncomfortable when I brought her up, but he wouldn't tell me anything specific." Etienne's hand tightens where it rests on the nape of her neck. "Then I hope that time will serve them both well." "I do too." She tilts her head to observe the strong profile of her husband's nose. "And you?" she teases. "Has time away from me served you well? All I managed to accomplish was missing my wife." He tucks his chin to look down at her. "Though I have been doing some research in your absence." "Yes, I've noticed." The entire walk to their chambers was an obstacle course of books and journals on every tabletop and cast aside in the middle of the hallway, like he had thrown them down as he was walking. And before that, there was the cook coming to greet her in the foyer with concerns of her husband's increasingly strange demands while Belinda was away. His supposed need for rabbit hearts and pitchers of salt water, bunches of fresh rosemary left to dry on the windowsill for exactly 36 hours, and demands of her and the housemaid to not disturb him when his doors are closed. Certain tasks he'd undertaken where it was vital he not be interrupted. For the sake of goodwill, she gave them both the rest of the morning off. Belinda knows of her husband's beliefs, glimpses into a world of ritual and wardship, studies of augury and communion and necromancy that he prefers she not get too close to. Etienne shifts underneath her, and she reads discomfort in his movements. She strokes a hand down his cheek, so he knows not to be ashamed of it all on her behalf. "What has prompted it? Have I come to see you while I was gone?" He's told her, too, of the spirit that haunts him, the one that looks just like her, that follows him around the house and watches him from doorways and windows and stares at him unblinking, stares at him like he's done something unforgivable. Belinda has never seen herself, and Etienne claims the spirit has never appeared while she's in the house. She fretted for days over having to leave him when word of her father's illness arrived, knowing what it might invite back into Etienne's life. But there was no getting around the trip. And besides, Etienne had sworn his confidence that that time was behind them. It would appear that he'd spoken too soon. His eyebrows tick up at the middle, like he's attempting to contain his emotion. "I thought it was over," he whispers. "It's been so long. I feel like a fool, letting my guard down as I have been." A deep ache swells behind Belinda's ribcage. She squeezes Etienne tighter. "You've been happy. It's not foolish to hope. What have you found?" "There is a ritual, one for banishment. I have been completing the prerequisite steps over the past week." "Oh?" Belinda struggles to understand. "Yes. There is only one step left to do. It won't be easy." His fingers flex against her back, a signal that he is thinking hard. He seems to choose his words carefully. "The act won't be physically challenging, but I fear the toll it will have on my heart and constitution." Belinda frowns. "It sounds taxing. Are you sure this is the only way?" She considers, not for the first time, bringing up the possibility of relocation, abandoning this home that torments him so in favor of a fresh start, a life away from paranoia and body doubles. She can't see. Before she can muster up the right words, he's saying, "It will be worth it. I want to do it. I want my Belinda to be the only Belinda in my life." She smothers a grin against the column of his throat. "I'd quite like that as well." Etienne is quiet for a long moment before speaking again. "I won't pretend it isn't terrible, but it is necessary, too. I want my wife to have a good life, and I need to be better to give one to her. I need to be rid of this." A strong rush of affection surges through Belinda. Oh, she loves this man, something awful. She'd follow him into hell. "Then you will be brave, and you will be successful." She rises and falls with the depth of Etienne's answering sigh. "You sound so much like her," he mutters. "Like who?" she asks. "Like Belinda." Belinda's thumb falters where it was rubbing a soothing path along his collarbone. "What?" A giggle bubbles out of her, confusion mingling with sleepy amusement. "It's uncanny. You've never been this good before." He doesn't seem to register her stiffening, or he does, and ignores it. "You've never come to me like this, lay upon me like this. You must know what I'm going to do." "Etienne, it won't work." Etienne raises his voice, speaking over her. "I won't let it." Belinda lifts her head to look her husband in the eyes. A coldness cracks through her when she sees the resolution in his face. "Etienne, I don't..." Her voice breaks off into a scared whisper. "It's me." He shakes his head. "My wife knows me better than this. She tells me when to expect her. You've misjudged. I know you're not really her this time." Belinda curses her attempt at being romantic. He thinks she's haunting him, not surprising him. She's never been so near him when he's in the middle of one of these supposed spectral visits. It's sobering. It's frightening. She tries to sit up. and grunts when Etienne uses his hand on her neck to ease her back down again. His hold is strong, not enough to hurt, but in her shock, she goes easy. Etienne's mouth is at her ear. My wife is not to be home for a few days yet. By then, all of this will be dealt with and done. It will be like it never happened. She won't have any part of it. She will not have such a weak, nervous husband. His voice shakes. I will keep her safe. It's all the warning Belinda gets before the knife is plunged into her back. She jerks violently. Pain whips through her, fast and brutal. It's like someone has dumped a full basin of water over her. No, the sensation is real, and it's not water. It's blood, hot and wet and slick and spreading fast, sticking her chemise to her skin. She frantically shoves herself up, grappling for a place on her back she can't reach, too low for the arm she stretches over her shoulder, too high for the one she stretches under. She arches, incapacitated by the pain, her mouth opening and closing like a fish thrown onto rocks, gasping into air that isn't helping her situation, feeling inches from death. The knife digs into her shifting skin, or is her skin digging into the knife? The awful, writhing, sawing sensation ripping through her. She's never been stabbed before, but this cannot be normal. Flashes of rabbit hearts and salt come to her. And no, of course this isn't normal. Not by Etienne's design. She hunches, trying to scramble away from the pain. But there's nowhere to go that it doesn't follow. She shoves her face into the pillow beside her husband's stunned face, her hands fisting at the sheets. Etienne grips her hips tight. Belinda, she can only answer with a whimper. She's trembling so hard she can barely open her mouth anymore for how hard her teeth chatter. No. Etienne pushes against her shoulders. She doesn't understand what he wants. She doesn't understand what's happening. Dear God, no. His touch moves to her face, and he wrenches her head back with his hands shoved up into her hair. Belinda. He jams his fingers under her jaw, ignoring her choking, feeling for something. Upon finding it, his face goes white. Belinda. Again, more urgently, wrestling to sit them both upright. Belinda. It's all coming to her in flashes. The horrible red smear on Etienne's cheek. The wetness that's dripping down the back of her legs. The sudden realization that she can't support herself. She slumps against Etienne. Dazedly, she thinks of her parents, of all the men they'd wanted her to marry. A parade of surgeons and doctors with their deep pockets and upturned noses. Professionals who would know what to do with a gaping wound. Professionals she had rejected for the love of a poet. Her poet. who had nothing to offer but a quiet life and endless adoration. Etienne cradles her against him, rocking them back and forth. He's sobbing. "Why are you here? You weren't supposed to be here. I thought you were the specter. Please believe me. Oh God, please forgive me." He sounds wrecked. Belinda wants to comfort him, but she can't pick her head up. Then darkness clouds her vision, and she can't do anything at all anymore. Belinda blinks awake. The ground is uncomfortable beneath her back. What is she doing on the ground? Etienne is kneeling by her side, head in his hands. There's something red all over his hands. Belinda pushes herself up, reaching out to touch Etienne's knee. He jolts at the barest brush of her fingers. "Belinda." He sounds relieved. He yanks her forward, and she goes crashing against his chest. Why is his heart beating so fast? That red substance on his hands is getting all over her now, staining her crisp white chemise. Why does it smell so strongly of metal? Her head feels fuzzy. Really? Why is she on the ground? A moment ago, she was laying in bed, gossiping with Etienne about her brother's marriage. Did she fall out of bed? Did she hit her head? Is that why everything feels so off? "I'm sorry," she murmurs slowly. "I'm not sure what happened. Did I fall? You..." Etienne is shaking. She must have really scared him. "I fixed it. It's all right." "Fixed what? How long was I out?" "It doesn't matter. You're all right. It's all right now." Belinda frowns. "Etienne, is my head bleeding?" He winces. "What? Why are you asking me that?" "Blood." She can't think of anything else to say. She should get a cloth, something to clean him with. She pushes away from him, bracing against the edge of the mattress to stand. Her hand sinks into something cold and wet. Before she can search for the source of it, Etienne pitches forward, grabbing her by the cheeks and pulling her to look back at him. It makes her head spin. "Don't look," he says. He sounds gravely serious. Belinda's heart stutters. "What?" "Don't look," like a petulant child. Belinda can't stop herself. She's wriggling out of his grip before he can stop her again, ignoring his cry, turning to look at herself, laying dead in a mess of blood on the bed. Herself on the bed. Blood. All air leaves her. She jerks to her feet, stumbling backwards. She can't look away. She's just laying there, her hair stuck to her forehead and her chemise soaked through with red. Her eyes are still open. Behind her, Etienne remains on the ground. His voice is low, thick with grief. "There was an accident. I did what I had to fix it." "What?" Her voice sounds like it's coming from miles away. She doesn't even know what to ask. She can't look away. "I didn't know if it would work. I had only read about the ritual. I've never attempted it. But the journals said I could comb through time and bring something back with me. He looks up. I brought you. Belinda's stomach turns. Etienne's face is wet with tears. Where is she? You brought me from the past? From before the accident. Yes. It was the only way. You were already gone. His voice breaks, and he hangs his head. His shoulders are shaking. Belinda looks at him. She looks at herself. But what of the Etienne in the past? Are you the same as him? Our paths have diverged, he says gravely. Well, then, what of that Etienne? Is he all alone now? How must he feel, having just had his wife taken from him? Etienne shudders, his eyes darkening. I know how he feels. For some reason, that's what does Belinda in. Her stomach lurches, and she stumbles to the lavatory, shoving the door closed behind her, before retching into the sink. Nothing comes up. It makes her feel worse. Not the brightest bulb. The light panned over the coast, gutting the night like a blade through a fish's belly. Emerson. Li Sao. From experience, he knew the storm would be raging well into the next day. But he'd be safe here. This lighthouse had weathered many storms before this one, and it would weather many more after, too. It had stood here since before he was born, and it would stand long after he was dead, which wouldn't be long now, he reasoned. He raised his metal cup to the windows, which looked out onto the frothing midnight ocean. He offered the night his cheers, then sipped his neat rum. Lightning lit up the abyss, burning his retinas white for one faltering heartbeat. The wind whipped and whooped around the edges of the lighthouse. The rumble of thunder came 3 seconds later, reverberating through his bones. Emerson blinked. The ocean was a cruel mistress sometimes. He knew that more than anybody. He'd spent much of his life aboard fishing vessels, at sea for months. He felt more at home on the open sea than on dry land. That was why he'd taken on the task of lighthouse keeper after retirement. But it seemed that people had lost their respect for the water. Kids rode inflatable beds out on riptides and needed rescuing. Rich yuppies took their boats out in unsafe conditions and needed rescuing. Partying youngsters went for midnight swims whilst inebriated. They drew the attention of the sea beasts, which they then hunted for revenge. And thus, the creatures needed rescuing due to their dwindling numbers. Companies dumped their foul excretions into the blue, so the sea needed rescuing too. Emerson growled and scowled out. The thunder and lightning lashed from the heavens once again. The rain pelted sideways at the window, rattling against the glass. The gale screamed like a dying creature, wounded by a harpoon. Another sound chimed throughout the lighthouse. But this had nothing to do with thunder. He grunted. Somebody had rung the lighthouse's doorbell. Who on earth could that be? The lighthouse clung to a rocky piece of coast that jutted out into the ocean. It was far from any town or village, as Emerson liked it. The only company he usually had came in the form of passing boats and hungry seagulls. Emerson took another swig of rum and set his cup on the table. The wood bore the marks of 1,000,000 condensation rings from the rum mugs of history. He grumbled to himself and passed through the door to the spiral staircase. The doorbell rang again as he descended. With care, the final treacherous steps. He threw the door open to the howling wind. "Yar, I'm coming, I'm coming. Hold your seahorses." On the stoop, 2 kids huddled together, no older than 18. They clung to one another as the wind whipped at them, and the storm soaked them to their bones. "I'm sorry, sir," said the boy, raising his voice over the gale. "But our car broke down, and we're stranded. Can we please hold up with you until the storm has passed?" Emerson was not a people person, but he was also not a heartless monster either. He opened the door to the boy and the girl and guided them up the staircases. "Yar, come in, come in. You're wetter than water. I got some blankies upstairs. Come, let's get you and your lass dry. Me name's Emerson." The boy smiled and offered his hand despite the chill that shook him. "Thanks, man. You're the best, Harry. And this is Skyla." Emerson led them up the winding staircase to the lighthouse's upper room, lit by the beacon. He got some dry towels, stale and mutt-eaten, but dry, and put the kettle on for warm tea. You must be pretty frightened. What with you stranded in the dark and the rain, while the sea beats her chest like King Kong. She can be mighty fierce." The boy pulled a face and shook his head. He wrapped a towel around Skyla's shoulders before he tended to himself. "No, inconvenienced and uncomfortable, but not scared." Emerson frowned, but bit his tongue. He guided the youngsters to his couch. It wouldn't be the first time it got wet, and handed them mugs of steeping tea. He sighed and sat down opposite them on his old rickety chair. "And what, if you don't mind me asking, were you two doing out here this late at night?" The boy and the girl blushed. Harry started to say something, but then Skyla interrupted. She shoved her left hand into Emerson's face. A diamond glinted on her ring finger. "Harry proposed to me tonight." As the sun set over the water, staining it red, the color of love. Isn't that romantic? To Emerson, red was the color of blood, once you'd chummed the waters to lure in the big fish. But he didn't say this. "Yar, it do warm this old sea dog's heart to see young love in bloom." Why, my Batilda and I, we shared quite a torrid love affair, we did. But she's been sleeping with the fishes for longer'n you been alive. I still carry her picture in this old locket here, which I wear around me neck at all times. Here, take a look at this beauty, lad, but don't lose your eye for the young lass now, The boy blinked at the picture in the sea-air-rusted locket. He did a double take. He seemed to struggle for words. His eyebrows knotted together like a bowline. Sir, that's a manatee, Emerson recoiled. You youngsters and your unrealistic Hollywood beauty standards. You shouldn't perpetuate such unhealthy attitudes towards appearances. It only fosters anxiety and insecurity. Yar, you might be young and lovely now, but see how pretty you'll look in 60 years. Let's see how you are once the sea's done rusted your lungs and your legs been took by an orca and a great white workin' in cahoots. The girl reached over and rapped a knuckle on his shin. A smirk touched the corners of her lips. But sir, both your legs are still attached, Emerson yelped and tucked his legs back under his chair. I jumped into the blood-stained brine. I did. Wrestled me legs back from the bellies of the respect. These blades are made for woundin'. The knife whispered to him in its innocent, mouse-like voice. Tatum. Blythe gritted his teeth and squeezed the blade's handle in a white-knuckle grip. Moisture threatened to spill over from his eyes. No, he said. Not now. Not tonight. Stop it. But the knife, as usual, paid him no mind. Half hidden in the reflection along the blade, the little face grinned. It giggled. Its high-pitched tones recalled the voices of untold Disney characters. Murder, Tatum, murder, killing, death, slayings, stabby, stab. Tears spilling from his eyes, he began to chop the onion like a madman. Meanwhile, the blade giggled and chattered about everything it could do. Stabbing and slicing Tatum, punctured lungs, impaled hearts, slashed open bellies, sweet, juicy, beautiful blood, Tatum. Like a fountain, Tatum. Like a goddamn fountain. Tatum chopped, diced, and sliced the onion into oblivion. The recipe had asked for onion cut into cubes, and he had gone overboard. Behind Tatum, the toilet flushed. The sounds of hand washing came, and then the bathroom lock clicked open. Luella Fairchild, indeed as fair as her family name declared, stepped out. "How's the meal prep going?" she asked. He chucked the knife into the sink with a metallic clang. He grabbed a different blade from the magnetic knife rack. "Great," he said, his voice cracking. "Oh, let me handle that," Lou said. Before he could stop her, she'd picked up the knife and turned the tap on. What could he say? Don't touch that. The blade is sentient and maniacal. He'd be the one who sounded insane. She'd leave and never look back. Hell, she'd tell her friends to steer clear of him, and they'd inform their friends. He'd be alone forever. So, he watched her with the knife. He waited for a tiny voice to delight in obscenities. Luella pre-washed the knife under the tap. With the sponge, she wiped the blade clean until it glinted. And then, she placed the knife into the dishwasher. Meanwhile, the knife said nothing. She caught his gaze as she bent down to the dishwasher. A small smile touched the corner of her lips, but there was a flash of confusion, like light on a blade, in her eyes. "What?" he laughed. The sound was wild and unhinged. "Nothing. Hey, would you pass me the wine? I want to caramelize these onions. It's on the dining room table." The caution in her face softened, and her smile became more relaxed. "Sure thing. You sure do know your way around a kitchen, Tatum. I can't wait to try it. Be right back." He sighed and scrolled on his phone through the rest of the recipe. His battery was running low, so he plugged it into the charger cable he always kept on the counter. So, the next step is to, half a second after Lou had left the room, the fresh knife in his hands chuckled. "Murder, Tatum. Beautiful, cold-blooded murder. Stab her in the back, Tatum, in the back. Get her in the kidneys and watch her bleed out. Gorgeous killings, Tatum. Slash, stab, and slice. No, not this one, too." Could it be that it wasn't the knives at all? That it was him? That he was the one who was insane? Tatum took the knife and threw it at the wall. He screamed, not thinking about his present company. "No!" The blade thudded into the wall with the accuracy of a circus knife thrower. It punctured the wall, pointy end first, and remained there, wobbling from the force. Behind him, Luella screamed and jumped, dropping the wine. The bottle hit the kitchen tiles and shattered. Glass fragments and splashes of wasted wine flew in all directions. That was that then. The gig was up. Lou knew he was nuts. Tatum turned to look at her. He stood there, panting, eyes wide, hair wild, madness written all over his face. His shoulders slumped. I'm sorry, Lou. I'm so sorry. You need to leave." Hands held to her collarbone. Lou stepped around the glass and approached him. She reached for him, shaking. "Will you please tell me what's going on, Tatum?" Her voice hitched. "I can help. You need to trust me and open up. It's not good to keep this sort of thing trapped deep inside." He stammered. "I can't. Tatum, leave. Go on. Get out. Go. Now!" A heartbeat passed between them. Lou's eyes couldn't grow any wider. The world held its breath. The knives said nothing. And then the woman burst into tears, and bolted from his apartment, Tatum sobbed. What was wrong with him? Had he lost it? Were the men in white coats coming to take him away? Ha ha, coming to take him away? Tatum slammed the door shut. He took a step, tripped over the open dishwasher, and fell backwards. He landed on the knife Luella had cleaned and placed upright. The blade sliced through his back and penetrated out through his chest in a gout of blood. The wet metal glinted. Yay! Murder! Squeaked a tiny voice. Tatum gasped as the cold hands of death squeezed his heart. He reached up for his phone on the counter. His fingers crawled like a blind spider until Tatum found it. Lou, he choked, blood dribbling from his mouth. Lou? The charger cable, still plugged in, caught around something and yanked. The knife rack toppled from the kitchen counter, spilling the knives into the air. The glinting blades twirled and plunged like Olympic divers going for gold. They punctured him and left him pin-cushioned. A choir of voices rose in ecstasy. Yay! He should have told Luella what was going on. He'd been too scared to speak about this madness, fearing it would drive her away. But he'd driven her away anyway, and it had resulted in his death. He shouldn't have kept it all bottled inside. Now it was too late. Tears trickled from his eyes and intermingled with the blood spilling from his mouth as he faded away. The knives wriggled inside him, giggling about death and murder. Of the respective beasts, these blades are made for woundin'. The knife whispered to him in its innocent, mouse-like voice, Tatum. Blythe gritted his teeth and squeezed the blade's handle in a white-knuckle grip. Moisture threatened to spill over from his eyes. No, he said. Not now. Not tonight. Stop it. But the knife, as usual, paid him no mind. Half hidden in the reflection along the blade, the little face grinned. It giggled. Its high-pitched tones recalled the voices of untold Disney characters. Murder, Tatum, murder, killing, death, slayins, stabby, stabby, stab, stab. Tears spilling from his eyes. He began to chop the onion like a madman. Meanwhile, the blade giggled and chattered about everything it could do. Stabbing and slicing Tatum, punctured lungs, impaled hearts, slashed open bellies, sweet, juicy, beautiful blood, Tatum. Like a fountain, Tatum. Like a goddamn fountain. Tatum chopped, diced, and sliced the onion into oblivion. The recipe had asked for onion cut into cubes, and he had gone overboard. Behind Tatum, the toilet flushed. The sounds of hand washing came, and then the bathroom lock clicked open. Luella Fairchild, indeed as fair as her family name declared, stepped out. "How's the meal prep going?" she asked. He chucked the knife into the sink with a metallic clang. He grabbed a different blade from the magnetic knife rack. "Great," he said, his voice cracking. "Oh, let me handle that," Lou said. Before he could stop her, she'd picked up the knife and turned the tap on. What could he say? "Don't touch that. The blade is sentient and maniacal." He'd be the one who sounded insane. She'd leave and never look back. Hell, she'd tell her friends to steer clear of him, and they'd inform their friends. He'd be alone forever. So, he watched her with the knife. He waited for a tiny voice to delight in obscenities. Luella pre-washed the knife under the tap. With the sponge, she wiped the blade clean until it glinted. And then, she placed the knife into the dishwasher. Meanwhile, the knife said nothing. She caught his gaze as she bent down to the dishwasher. A small smile touched the corner of her lips, but there was a flash of confusion, like light on a blade, in her eyes. "What?" he laughed. The sound was wild and unhinged. "Nothing. Hey, would you pass me the wine? I want to caramelize these onions. It's on the dining room table." The caution in her face softened, and her smile became more relaxed. "Sure thing. You sure do know your way around a kitchen, Tatum. I can't wait to try it. Be right back." He sighed and scrolled on his phone through the rest of the recipe. His battery was running low, so he plugged it into the charger cable he always kept on the counter. "So, the next step is to..." Half a second after Lou had left the room, the fresh knife in his hands chuckled. "Murder, Tatum. Beautiful, cold-blooded murder. Stab her in the back, Tatum, in the fulfillment." Swaths of red and blue intermittently flooded my vision. Beneath the flimsy plastic, my limbs still pulsed with adrenaline. Initially, the barrage of sirens and shouts was an audible assault. But now, my thundering heart drowned most of it out. An officer loomed over me, his mouth forming words that failed to reach my ears. The paramedics seemed to retort, much to his chagrin. I cast my gaze upon the modern structure ahead, an incandescent glow piercing the night. Panels of glass stared back like watchful eyes, knowing the truth of what lay within. The smooth chime of a bell reverberated through the room, joined by the squeak of feet on yoga mats. My eyelids fluttered open, just in time to see the instructor place a hand gently over her heart and give a slight bow. A lithe figure next to me uncurled like a cat, stretching to life, feline and graceful in her movements. Her name-brand attire hugged her toned curves, the same curves that I'd seen in an Instagram post this morning. Retreat Day 1. Learning to love my body. The caption was a paragraph thinly veiled as self-love and content, but the undertones bled through. Despite, rather, instead. I learned I don't need It was smoke and mirrors, the edited photos, smiling to promote green juices, the constant upgrade of wardrobes and skincare products and makeup. Behind the facade was a girl grasping at the straws of relevancy and follower counts. And judging by the way she cut her eyes at the woman in the front row of the studio now, the straws were becoming further out of reach. Allison Divino. I recalled her name then, as she continued to glare at the woman. Long auburn locks whipped in my direction as Allison spun on her heel to leave. The woman under the fire of Allison's burning gaze appeared none the wiser. She smiled as she departed, holding an air of confidence that only a ruthless businesswoman could. Genevieve Sterling, financial investment heiress and CEO. It's no wonder Allison was green with envy. After all, I imagined the salary of an influencer paled in comparison. And how nice would it be to start life with a silver spoon? I made another mental note, trying to piece together the puzzle of faces I'd encountered last night at the welcome dinner, albeit a somewhat difficult task at a silent retreat. As I made my way to the doorway, a burly shoulder jostled against my own. Glancing to the side, I was met with the red-faced glare of Victor Russo, the lawyer who constantly seemed on the verge of a tantrum. For him, this event seemed more like mandatory anger management than a relaxing weekend of introspection. Victor grumbled something, shoving his way past me and out of the boiling studio. Hot yoga was never something I'd been eager to try, and the sweat pricking my skin reminded me of that. I yearned for a shower. I padded my way down the hall to my assigned room. Stretches of glass greeted me, late afternoon sunshine glistening upon the elaborate furnishings. As I turned on the shower, steam curling into the air and coating the mirror, I observed my reflection. Brunette hair, stringy with sweat, obsidian eyes gazing back, muscles aching. I peeled off my tank top. In doing so, a prickling sensation tingled beneath the skin of one of my shoulder blades. I strained my neck to inspect it in the mirror. A patch of redness had started to form, itching with each movement, skin flexing. Running a few fingers over the spot, I hissed, the sting palpable. Perhaps it was from one of the yoga positions, rubbing against the mat as I tried, unsuccessfully, to keep up. Stepping into the steam, I relished the warm caress. Since dinner wasn't for another hour, I took my time washing, scrubbing, and generally enjoying the sound of silence. I could tell most of the others were already struggling to cope with the drastic dissolution of most noise. All of them extroverts in their daily lives. This was a challenge for them. My thoughts wandered as I went about primping myself for dinner. After curling my hair, applying makeup, strapping on my heels, and sliding a pendant around my neck, I shimmied into my dress. A vibrant rayette. The satin of it clung in all the right places. A flat note that gradually increased in volume hummed from the digital panel by the door. Dinner time. The savory aroma of roasting meat wafted through the dining hall. My mouth watered. The chefs here were world class. The welcome dinner the night prior exemplified that as I had torn into a leg of lamb and wolfed down perfectly steamed asparagus, so I knew tonight would be no different. Oh, our selected meals were hand-delivered to each of us, half the group abstaining from meat. As I sliced into the steak before me, crimson juices pooling, my skin prickled with the sensation of being watched, I glanced up, a pair of blue eyes catching mine. His chiseled features were intense, and he didn't avert his gaze as he took a bite of his meal. The twitch of a slight smile pulled at the corners of his mouth as he continued to stare. Jackson Rothmeyer, corporate real estate mogul. I'd seen his icy gaze before, plastered across the media. He even had his own Wikipedia page. Quite the accomplishment for someone in real estate. But the way his eyes traveled ever lower made my skin crawl. He was married, after all, his wife having attended many of his philanthropic appearances. The stare down seemed to last forever, finally interrupted by the crash of glass. Everyone turned. In the far corner of the room, a bulbous man in a designer suit waved a waiter away as he attempted to collect the shattered remnants of a whiskey glass. He adjusted his tie with fumbling fingers, and if this hadn't been a silent retreat, he probably would have slurred his words. Howard Gunnison, former politician and drunkard, the man was notoriously scummy. So when I saw his face last night, I almost laughed out loud at the notion of such a human trying to better themselves. And, quite obviously, the mission was not going well. He had to have snuck a flask in to get that tanked between yoga and dinner. At the table across from Howard, a posh woman in a pantsuit curled her lip in disgust at the scene. Melissa Ellsworth, entrepreneur and public speaker. Melissa had graced many stages in her career, discussing the ins and outs of successful entrepreneurship. The details of her rags to riches story pulled on the heartstrings of the nation, inspiring the laymen to believe that perhaps they too could start their own clothing brand from the ground up. Forks scraping plates pierced the quiet, with the occasional mumble from Howard as he beckoned for a new glass of whiskey. Melissa rolled her eyes over her wine glass as she took a prolonged sip. Our fearless leader and head of the retreat entered the room then. Aunt Cass, if I felt anything for the man sitting across from me at the dinner table, it would have been an incredibly romantic evening. The restaurant was dimly lit. We'd each had 2 glasses of red wine. There was a string quartet playing a lovely tune at the center of the dining room. And Samuel looked handsome that night. Well, for him. His suit was a size too big, and he had gotten a weird haircut that week. But he'd never looked better. Champagne? He asked me. Dear God, I thought to myself. He did not put the ring in a champagne glass. 3 minutes later, our waiter set a champagne glass down in front of me with a sparkling diamond ring at the bottom of the glass. I squealed and smiled at Samuel. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. I kissed him, because that's what you do when you accept a marriage proposal. I slipped the ring on my finger. I did not want to, and would not marry this man. But my squeal of enthusiasm was real. I was thrilled to be his fiancée at last. Chuck, a year ago, I received a different marriage proposal from a man who is Samuel's opposite in every way. Theodore is handsome, clever, ambitious, and can fill out a suit. We met at the magazine where I'd been working as an associate editor for 5 years. He started with us as a weekly humor columnist, and we began dating almost immediately. I was hesitant at first. I had avoided romantic entanglements ever since an incident during my junior year of college. Eventually, Theodore's small gestures won me over, saving the Times crossword for me and laying it on my desk every morning, surprising me with coffee from my favorite place in the village. Once I agreed to a first date, dinner at Bistro. I fell hard and fast. I had never been in love like that before. I couldn't wait to open my eyes and see him beside me every morning. And there was no moment of my life, exhilarating or devastating, that I didn't want to share with him. I did try to stop. I tried to keep things casual, suggesting that best friends with benefits could be an option for us. Theodore just laughed at me, his blue eyes sparkling. It was impossible. We were clearly meant to be more than friends. The inevitable was drawing closer and closer when Theodore suggested dinner at Bistro on the 2nd anniversary of our first date. I started to panic, Aunt Cass's voice echoing in the back of my head. I tried everything I could to cancel our anniversary dinner. I blamed a family commitment, but it turned out that Theodore had gone to my parents to ask for their blessing, so that plan failed. I told Theodore I had a deadline at work, but the editorial staff was in the loop and had cleared my schedule for the weekend. The night of the Bistro dinner, we left straight from the office. Theodore went downstairs ahead of me to get a cab, and I looked frantically around my office for a reason to stay. "Do I have any messages?" I asked my assistant. Samuel shook his head, giving me a dopey grin. "None." Chuck, the thing you need to understand is that I desperately wanted to marry Theodore. Everything about our relationship was amazing. The sex, the conversations, the unconditional emotional support. Everything. An engagement, however, was out of the question. When we got to Bistro, Theodore had reserved a quiet table in the corner. I observed all the small details, the music the lighting, the flowers, and I suddenly felt dizzy, like I needed to sit down. Theodore pulled out the chair for me to sit. Yet another sweet and small romantic gesture that made me love him even more. "I can't marry you," I exclaimed. I'd never seen a person's face crumple like that. He was 31 years old, and he looked like a distraught toddler. Theodore let go of the back of my chair and started to back away from the table silently. "No," I said, seizing his hand. "You have to let me explain why." That's when I told him about Aunt Cass. "Chakak, it's really hard to explain, Aunt Cass. Our family was Italian, passionate, loud, and full of characters. An aunt who made racist comments after 3 glasses of wine. The cousin who would always end up passed out around a table. And Aunt Cass, who everyone said could predict the future. It supposedly started when she was a kid. Her mom asked her about having a play date with a friend, and 5-year-old Cass said she couldn't go because of Uncle Joey's funeral. Uncle Joey, healthy as a horse, collapsed and died of an aneurysm 2 days later. After that, her predictions were a regular occurrence. Sometimes, Aunt Cass delivered warnings, attempting to help family members avoid a negative consequence, like when she warned my oldest cousin, Mia, not to go to a school dance, or she'd risk a grave injury. Mia stayed home. The limo her friends rented was in a horrible accident, and 3 kids ended up in the hospital. Other times, Cass's predictions were more definitive, unavoidable, like when she told her cousin Freddie that he was about to be fired. He was furious, stormed away from the Sunday dinner table, called her a liar. Yet when his boss called him into her office 2 days later to give him the bad news, no one in our family, not even Freddie, was surprised. It was accepted family lore that Cass's predictions were accurate. For that reason, I did my best to avoid her. Occasionally, her predictions were positive, like when she told my sister Tori that she'd get into Juilliard. But for the most part, they were gloomy and eerie, words that would haunt you every moment until the prophecy was fulfilled. Aunt Cass tended to make her predictions in private conversations during our weekly Sunday dinners at Nonna's house, so I stuck with my sisters during those evenings. I did my best to never be on my own and in Cass's eye line. Then one night, during my junior year of college, we were watching TV in Nonna's den, and my little sister stole my dessert. Just snatched up my chocolate chip cannoli with a wicked grin on her face. I whacked her in the arm and retreated to the kitchen to get a new one. It happened so fast. There Aunt Cass was, smiling at me as she brewed the coffee. And all of a sudden, she was speaking. "You'll have 3 men in your life," she said casually. I froze, one hand about to select a new dessert. Was this how it happened? Aunt Cass had cornered my sister Isabella last month to tell her that she'd never be a movie star, But Isabella hadn't mentioned such an informal tone. The first one will break your heart. The second man will become your fiancé, but will die before you can marry. The third will be your happily ever after, Aunt Cass continued. She handed me a napkin and a paper plate for my cannoli. Aunt Cass, I wasn't typically speechless. I had goosebumps on my arms and legs. She left the room, and I heard her start talking to my nonna about a doctor's appointment she was taking her to the next day. Aunt Cass had delivered her prediction, and now she was ready to return to small talk. I didn't tell anyone. I had a boyfriend at the time. We'd been dating for 3 years, and we talked about marriage and kids. 6 months after Aunt Cass's prediction, I caught him cheating with my best friend. It was upsetting, but I wasn't surprised. Chag. This was the story I told Theodore that night at Bistro. The look he gave me afterward was scornful. Citizens, death. She trembled uncontrollably as he pushed the muzzle into her forehead. Nobody moves or makes a sound. Any heroics, bullets will start flying. As you can probably tell, this is a bank heist. Cooperate, and I'll spare you all your lives. Please don't kill me. I'll take you to the vault right now. Shut it. I decide when we go, he replied as he jarred her head back with the barrel. The hostages looked on in slouched postures, with furrowed brows and gaping mouths, wondering if the gun's magazine was loaded or not. For the bank manager's sake, they hoped it wasn't, and that he was pretending to have a loaded gun, because they believed this sort of heist was to scare people into submission with no real intention to harm them. After all, it was only one guy, not a group of robbers. Hey, mister, my wife's so scared her water has just broken, exclaimed a hostage. We need medics, quickly. I said no heroics, he exclaimed, striking the butt of the gun to the bank manager's temple. She fell in a heap, motionless. Now look at what you've made me do. I mean it, people. Don't try my patience, or one by one, it'll be you lot getting the bullet. Are you crazy? My wife is in pain. She thinks the baby is in the wrong position. We need a doctor now. He sighed and approached the pregnant woman and knelt by her side. She was shaking and sweating uncontrollably. I'm so sorry about this, but I can't have you or your husband messing this up. There's $20 million in the vault, and I want some of it, no matter what the cost. Please, just take the money and go quickly. We'll say nothing to the police, replied the woman. The bank manager opened her eyes. She sat up, propping her back against the wall. All she heard was 2 shots fired, followed by a cacophony of screams and chaos. He fired another shot to the ceiling, and the room fell silent. Order was restored. Right, you lot, clean the blood up, and then drag the pregnant woman and her husband over to the far corner, he demanded. Are you fucking crazy, man? You've killed an unborn baby and the mother and father. exclaimed another hostage. "In this game, there's always collateral damage. Now shut it," he said, training the Glock on him. He glanced through a window. The street outside Citizen Bank was as normal as he'd expect it. So far, 2 minutes had passed since he'd entered the bank. There was another 5 minutes before the NYPD would have the building surrounded. So far, so good. With the entrance door lock, nobody had approached or tried to enter the bank. Still partially dazed, the bank manager attempted to stand. She stumbled, but he soon skittered back to her and pushed her to the floor. "Stay down until I say otherwise, got it?" He slid the rucksack from his back and pulled out a large bag of cable ties and tied her hands behind her back. Then he tied her legs, leaving enough movement for her to walk, but not run. With 2 less hostages to not worry about, he made quick time in using more ties to bound the other 8 hostages. "Okay, people, if I hear the slightest of sounds or sense the smallest of movements, one of you will be joining those bodies over there." He hauled the bank manager to her feet and pushed her in front to lead the way to the vault. She stumbled and fell to her knees with a hard thud. He grabbed her hair and wrenched her back to her feet. She screamed, and the hostages felt her pain. In retaliation, she spun and spat in his face. She quickly felt the back of his hand make contact with her cheekbone. It sent her tumbling for a second time, but she didn't get up. He didn't let her. Instead, he grabbed her hair and dragged her to the vault. The hostages winced, imagining her discomfort as her legs flailed in a futile attempt to stall him. "Now that he's down in the vault, we have to do something?" whispered a hostage. He looked mid-30s, with a physique of a guy that worships a gym. "Are you out of your fucking mind, sir? You heard what the guy said, right? If you can cut me loose, I can take him. I'm ex-military. Apprehension is my forte. I've got a small knife in my back pocket. Can you reach it? You're gonna get us all killed trying to be the hero. NYPD will be here soon. They'll take him out." Only if someone has activated the alarm. There were moments of silence. He was waiting for a reply that never came. "I thought not. But the guy keeps checking his watch, and he thinks they're on their way. I can activate the alarm so the cops know, and then I'll take him out." "No, man. You're not hearing me. I can't let you do this. I've got a wife and kids. He'll shoot us all. What do the rest of you think? Are you with me?" The rest of the hostages didn't respond. "You try anything, man. I'll take you down myself. Just trust me, man. It's worth a try," replied a hostage. "He's trained. He knows what he's doing." The locks released. He turned the catch, and the door to the vault swung open. "What the fuck?" he said, staring into the barrel of a Glock 19. "You didn't tell me there was security in the vault," he said to the manager. She connected with his gaze and dropped her shoulders. "I ain't security," replied the guy standing at the entrance of the vault. "Stop what you're doing, and nobody else has to get hurt." It was a stalemate situation. Both guys had their guns trained at each other, fingers twitching at the triggers, and then, bang, the guy in the entrance to the vault fell. He was soon surrounded by a pool of his own blood. He began to load as much cash as he could into the two large holdalls by his side. He could hardly zip them up, but to his estimation, he had at least $600,000 in each. Way less than what he wanted, but enough to start up somewhere new. With one bag on his back and the other in his left hand, he grabbed her hair with his right and dragged her back to the main foyer, where he noticed one of the hostages was missing. From out of nowhere, the hostage charged toward him, thigh and drived him to the floor, like the New York Giants were playing out in front of them. They tussled about, but the hostage found himself being overpowered and had the barrel of the Glock shoved in his mouth. Bang! All the remaining hostages jump out of their skins as blood and bits of brain matter splattered all over them. The hostage lay there in a bloody, gory mess that was too much for most of them to look. "Hey, mister," we tried to tell him it was a stupid idea, but he didn't listen, replied one of the hostages. "He's paid with his life for his insubordination." He checked his watch, and 4 minutes had passed. "Time to check out. The manager is coming with me. Inform the police I have her as my hostage, and any attempt to intercept me, and she gets the bullet, right?" Exiting the Citizen Bank, he threw the holdalls in the trunk of his General Lee, while the bank manager got into the passenger side. He put the pedal to the metal and sped his way along Valley Stream. There were no police in sight. Perhaps the NYPD had other emergencies, he thought. He took a left and followed the sign that was heading for Brooklyn. "Okay, Max, you can stop calling me the bank manager now," said Elizabeth. "And you didn't have to be so rough on me. It had to look like you were another hostage. I just hope when you shot that guy in the vault, you were obscured from the cameras so it looked like me. But how did we miss that guy? I think I did good shooting him, but too many mistakes were made this time. I should have accounted for the guy in the vault." "Yeah, but you dealt with him pretty quick. From how we played it out, the cops will think you were innocent. But what about the hostage that thigh and drived you? If you hadn't have got the better of him, we wouldn't be here now. We've got enough money, and I don't have to work in a shitty bank anymore." He took another left and entered on to Interstate 678. He leant over to the passenger's seat. Their lips engage. "New life. Here we come," she said. The moral of the story. The guard leading me into the room gives a hard yank on the chain. Pain lances through my neck, and I snarl, baring my impressive fangs for full effect. He shies away, naked fear on his face, before remembering which of us is supposed to be the prisoner. "Watch it, mutt, or you'll be drinking out of the toilet through a wired jaw," he says, his tough guy tone betrayed by the quaver in his voice and the stink of fear in his scent. I snort in contempt. "Oh, please, CO. We both know who's afraid of the big bad wolf." His expression hardens, mouth tightening into a white line. One hand drops to the baton sheathed at his waist. "That will do, officer," a new voice says. "I'll ask you to do your job without further violating my client's civil rights." I look past the guard and his impotent rage to see a man sitting at the lone table in the room. The space is dimly lit, a single flickering fluorescent bulb recessed in the ceiling behind a grating. But I've got good eyesight. The guy's so short his legs barely clear the edge of the chair. I take in his expensive suit, immaculately groomed hair, and a face so wrinkled and wizened it looks like a prune staked out in the desert for a week. He smells of cologne, silk, a hint of moldy straw, and... that's curious. No fear. Not a hint of that very familiar scent. Interesting. That must mean he's either stupid or a villain. Like me. The guard secures my chain to a ring on the floor, giving me just enough play to reach my side of the table, then snaps a padlock on it with a loud click. He then steps back to stand against the wall. The short man's eyes, small, dark, and hard behind wire-rimmed glasses, flick to the guard. "Leave me alone with my client, if you please." "Not a good idea, buddy," the guard says, glancing at me. "You know who this is, right?" "Of course I do," the man snaps. "I also know the privileges that exist between the accused and his legal representation. Now, must I ask again?" The guard scowls, shakes his head, and leaves, slamming the door shut behind him. The lock on the door clicks loudly, too. I casually stretch as much as I can with the chain and collar, give a shake to fluff out my thick gray fur. "Client, eh? Funny, I don't remember hiring a lawyer." The faintest of smiles ghosts across the man's face. "You haven't, yet. But I'm certain you'll want to retain my services after you hear what I have to say." "Why's that?" I ask in the most bored tone I can manage. "Because I can make sure that you don't spend the rest of your life behind bars." I can't help it. My ears prick up at that. I force a derisive snort. "Not likely. They have a pretty good case against me." "And that is precisely why you want me to represent you." A positively oily grin stretches his lips. "Allow me to introduce myself." Two fingers extend to place a business card on the table between us. I glance down at it. Mr. R, attorney at law, specialist in defense of the wrongly accused. The black letters stand out against the crisp white, cutting across a spinning wheel picked out in gold foil. Yeah, it's a dead giveaway. Mr. Ray, that'd be short for... He raises a small hand to stop me before I can say it. "I would prefer if we kept this from being a first-name relationship." Yellowed teeth glint as he grins again. "Okay," I say with a flick of an ear. "Lawyer now, huh? Previous line of work didn't suit you?" Let's just say that it was far too labor-intensive. I find my new career to be much more rewarding. It also didn't require much of an adjustment, ethically speaking. So, Mr. R, it is for now. For that matter, what would you like me to call you? I shrug, a human gesture I've perfected over the years. Most people just scream wolf and run away when they see me. I see. Then I shall address you as Mr. Wolf, for simplicity's sake. Whatever. Now, Mr. R settles himself in his hard wooden chair. I'm familiar with the particulars of your case, Mr. Wolf, at least those that have been made publicly available, but perhaps you'd like to tell me your side of the story. Now I actually laugh. My side of the story? Not a lot of people are interested in that. As far as most of them are concerned, there's only ever one side. The one where I'm the villain, just out to do villain things. It's just how the story goes. So you don't deny the charges? Well now, Mr. R, that'd be telling, wouldn't it? I may be facing the headsman's axe or life in a cage, but I don't see any reason to make it easier on everyone. Mr. Wolf, we in the legal profession are required to keep our clients' confidence and cannot be compelled to reveal what is told us in confidence. Okay. Whether he's telling the truth or not, I find I just don't care. Well, yeah, I did it. Whatever they say, I did it all. Mr. R removes his glasses, pulls out a kerchief, and starts polishing the lenses. You stalked young Peter and his friends and attempted to murder a duck, I believe. I pretend to wince. Yeah, got so close, but she was just that lucky. I sigh. I can still taste feathers. And you destroyed the property of 3 industrious pigs? Hey, not my fault if their houses weren't up to code. Of course, then they tried to burn me alive. Lost a lot of fur on that one. Then you actually consumed a young lady and her grandmother? I give a little laugh. And the grandmother's cat. Not too many people remember that part. But I kinda missed out on the satisfaction of a good meal in the end. After I woke up on the riverbank, went through 3 surgeries to get all the rocks out of my belly, and spent 6 months in that stupid plastic cone. Well, let's just say that a certain woodsman is next on the menu if I ever get out of here. Mr. R finishes cleaning his glasses, sets them back in place, all without batting an eye. I see. So, you are guilty, and I must assume that the police have all the evidence they need, since you are sitting here before me, chained to the floor. I pull back my lips in a grin, or a snarl. Hard for me to tell the difference when I'm doing it. Like I said, I'm the villain. I do bad things. No matter how the story goes, that's always how it ends. It's what do they call it? The moral. That's right, the moral of the story. Bad people do bad things. Mr. R arches one scraggly eyebrow. What if I told you the story doesn't have to end that way? I cock my head to one side. How's that? Mr. Wolf, my job doesn't necessarily consist of proving you innocent, Mr. R says. Not when I can make you into a victim instead of a villain. Say what? That's right, Mr. Wolf. Instead of making this about your crime, we can make it about you. We'll play up your tragic past, your difficult upbringing. Why, you said it yourself. People look at you and see nothing more than a scary animal. That's prejudice. It's colored your entire life, hasn't it? Is all I managed to get out in reply. Honestly, I'd never thought about it like that. Do you have a mate? Mr. R asks suddenly. Pups? A pack that relies on you? Needs you? What? No, nothing like that. I give my head a shake, trying to wrap my head around all this. Are you saying that you can make it look like I was the victim instead of the villain? Exactly, Mr. Wolf. Now his grin looks positively evil. We'll put you in front of the cameras, paint you a tragic victim of circumstances and biases. All that's required is the right spin on the facts. And believe me, Mr. Wolf, I know how to put the right spin on things. No doubt. All of this is confusing, and well, kinda disgusting. Look, why go through all that? Just post my bail and I'll skip town, how about? I'm only half joking. Again, he arches that eyebrow. To go on the run? To be hunted and hounded the rest of your life? Now I grin. I'm the big bad wolf, remember? What you just described, that's my normal. It doesn't have to be, says Mr. R. When I'm through, you'll spend a few months in prison. after which you'll be set up for life. A comfortable den, plenty of game to hunt, even your own woods if you want. No one will dare bother you again. With enough positive media coverage, I can work out a very favorable deal for you. Deals are something of a specialty for me. Now, how's that sound? I stare at him, narrowing my eyes. What do you get out of this, Mr. Ray? Something tells me you're not doing it out of the kindness of your heart. He gives a short laugh. Oh, goodness, no. You see, in the process of rewriting the narrative, there will be interviews, televised appearances, at least one book deal. That means money, Mr. Wolf. Rather a lot of money. His oily grin reappears, and I get 50%. Oh, now that's disgusting. Sickening. He wants me to lie about what I am, pretend to be something I'm not. A victim. A weak, pathetic, mewling victim. And also he can exploit my villainy for cash. I don't know, I say. It all sounds like a big lie to me. And you've never lied before? Something about his tone of voice, so cocky and superior, makes my hackles rise, literally. I seem to recall one of the charges is impersonating a little old lady. That's rather dishonest, don't you think? I growl deep in my throat. I like to think of it as deceptive. A predator has to be cunning after all. Indeed. Come now, Mr. Wolf. Let's stop bandying words. He lifts a briefcase onto the table, snaps it open, and produces a gold fountain pen with a flourish. You just sign these documents, and I'll get started turning you into the tragic victim. A victim? Me. I'm a villain. I made the choices that made me a villain. And to be honest, I never really regretted it until I got caught. If not for that woodsman, I'd still be out there, stalking Peter and his friends, blowing down pigs' houses, and looking for my next little Red Riding Hood. But then, look where being the villain has gotten me. In this room, with a scumbag who wants me to lie, tell people a sob story, deny what I am, just so I won't be punished for the wrong I've done, and he can make a lot of money. I think Mr. R is a worse villain than I am, and he's definitely not the kind of villain I want to be. Now let's get this straightened out, I say, the words coming out from behind bared fangs. I'm a villain. I know I'm a villain. I own that. I'd rather just accept that I've done wrong and take what I've got coming. Mr. R purses his lips like he's tasted something really sour. Mr. Wolf, please be reasonable. I think you'd better get out of here, Mr. R, before I start naming names, or I could just gobble you up. Your pick. Mr. Wolf, I lunge forward, straining the chain to its limits. Planting my forepaws on the table, I let out a savage bark, jaws snapping, spattering drool all over Mr. R's nice suit and shiny glasses. He lurches backwards, tumbling out of the chair, briefcase and pen flying across the room. A second later, he scrambles back to his feet, staring at me, eyes wide, and darts for the door. Now I smell it. The fear. Its stink is thick and rank. I guess he really isn't stupid. With one hand on the doorknob, he pauses, glancing back at me. You know they will never stop seeing you as a villain. They will hunt and persecute you, no matter what you do. Maybe so, I reply, suddenly tired of this whole thing. But maybe I've earned that. Maybe if I want that to change, I need to show them that I can change too. I shrug. So even though I'm the villain in this story, maybe I can still do the right thing. Maybe that's the moral of the story, sipping tea with a pretty monster. Mothers keep secrets from their families for good reasons. Jody's mom, for example, sleeps around. Amanda's mom snorts a little coke. The worst thing I can say about my mom is that she smokes. But all that changed today when I came home from college earlier than planned. Home. The place where Mom ruled. The woman who gave me unending advice on how to keep things looking good down there. The woman who overshared intimate details of her personal life with me. It was nearly midnight when I unlocked the door, hoping Mom was in bed so I could do the same. Unfortunately, she was up. In the living room, nude, save for a pair of hooker heels, strangling someone with pantyhose. College, for all its good points, did not prepare me for this. There was no curricular path to take that dealt with mothers in the act of killing someone while wearing no clothes, so I just stood there and watched the victim struggle before going limp. "Hello, dear. You're home early." Mom smiled the smile that garnered her an obscene amount of money on the public speaking circuit. If she was nonplussed, I missed it. "What the fuck, Mom?" My university vocabulary deserted me at the moment. "I'll get dressed and make us a nice cup of tea, dear. And don't be vulgar." I didn't want tea, but I got it anyway. Black tea. Strong enough to float a horseshoe on. Sweet enough to send me into diabetic shock. Mom thought tea was a cure for all ills, especially when delivering bad news. When she and Dad decided to get divorced, the news came with tea. I had no idea how to start this conversation. What I did was glare at her until she spoke. It had to be done. Mom reported this as if murder were a necessary evil, like dealing with periods, shopping with your mom, or figuring out the right bra to buy for the senior prom. Who was he? This wasn't what I really wanted to know, but I was afraid to ask her what the dead woman's sins were. She. Mom sipped her tea and nibbled on a Girl Scout cookie. Trefoils. It took me a moment to digest this little nugget of information. Since the person had a bag over their head and was fully dressed, I think I can be excused for not knowing the gender of the dead person. "Okay, Mom, let me get this straight. You were nude and you strangled a woman to death." Well, I had to get her here first, so I honey trapped her." "What's that?" "A honey trap? Using sexual promises to lure someone to a place where you can do what you want to do to them." "But..." My voice trailed off, unsure of how I wanted to object to Mom's behavior. Mom stood up. "While you're busy trying to construct a complete sentence, I'll just nip out and load the body in the car. I have a date with a band saw that simply won't wait." I drank the tea. It helped. I fell asleep waiting for Mom to return from her errands. I refused to think about the incident since it involved some sort of saw, so I popped one of her sleeping pills and crashed. It was afternoon when I woke up. The events of the night seemed like a horrible dream, but I had evidence that it happened. Mom's slut heels were still in the living room, reposing innocently under the coffee table. "Good afternoon, sunshine. Tea?" I could write a treatise on how I didn't want tea, but I would get it anyway. "Tell me." I hoped the first 2 words I uttered today would be sufficient for the day. They weren't. "Sweetie, do you remember Uncle Zach?" "Barely." I sipped the tea. Mom's tea should be weaponized by the Pentagon. "Well, he was fond of you and your female cousins. Too fond, if you get my meaning." I stared at her, puzzled. "So fond," she continued, "that he would often put his hands in inappropriate places." "Okay, I don't remember that. He used to give me a box of chocolates and a stuffed animal when he visited. And that's as far as he would get with you, dear." So, I did what any right-thinking mother would do in this situation. I killed him. I asked for another cup of tea with extra sugar. How? God, I had so many other questions about the matter, but my brain wouldn't allow them to get to my mouth. Stupid, stupid brain, she explained. Sliced the carotid, dumped him into the bayou. Watch the alligators spin him to the bottom. I don't know if he died from my wound or from drowning by alligator. Did you know? Mom paused to take a sip of tea. That alligators bury their food and let it rot for a bit before eating it? No, Mom, I didn't know that, I said matter-of-factly. Mom sighed. Anyway, that started me thinking, what am I doing with my life? Sure, I'm making tons of money and I have a beautiful daughter, but is that enough? Don't I owe it to the world to get rid of as many bad people as possible? The mother-daughter relationship throughout history is fraught with differing opinions, tastes, and morals. I expected to argue with my mom over things, but this wasn't a discussion I ever expected to have. By killing people? Bad people, Mom said, correcting me, raising her right forefinger in the air. We have laws, Mom. The problem being, sweetie, that the law enforcement authorities always act after the fact. They come to the rescue after the person is dead, raped, or otherwise victimized. And then, well, what? How successful are they? She had a point. Which brings me to this. I leaned forward and stared at my mom. You seduced a woman? Mom smiled a smile that would make Dracula have second thoughts. Yes, I'm very good at seduction. Mom, I'm pretty. I still have my figure and a certain coquettish mannerism that others are drawn to. Fuck. Don't be vulgar, dear. We sat in silence for a few minutes. It was an uncomfortable silence on my part, but Mom seemed to enjoy it. She flipped through a fashion catalog, clucking her tongue at some of the modern attire. But that's Mom. Old-fashioned about fashion, but quite liberal when it comes to liberating the living from breathing. You have something to tell me? I sat up, stunned. Given the recent events, the news I had for her had been forgotten. The momentous revelation now seemed picayune. I did, but I think your actions have eclipsed my news. Mom grinned. I see that the expensive education is paying off. How many people have you killed, Mom? I was loath to share my information right now. Didn't seem like the right time, what with my mom's confessions. And I know what you're thinking. How many people has she sent to the grave? I don't think I want to know because the number, I'm sure, is big. And I'll tell you why I think this. My mom is crazy. Two things were revealed in the next 10 minutes. 1. Mom had, thus far, killed 37 people. I say thus far because she's not a woman to give up on her dreams. 2. She already knew I was gay. How did you know? As good as it felt to not be censured by a parent for one's sexual proclivities, it was still a bombshell. You wore a lot of plaid in high school. My mom took my hand across the table. Dear, no woman looks good in plaid. That's it? Heavens no. You listened to a lot of Bikini Kill and L7. So what? And you slept with Jody in your room many, many nights. Yeah, okay. Girls do that. Nude? She got me there. I spent the rest of the day avoiding Mom. By that, I mean that I went out, had a few drinks, and I may or may not have kissed a couple of women. It's kind of a blur, which is what I was hoping for. When I got up the next day, Mom was gone. In typical style, she left me a note that said everything and explained nothing. Be back next week, sweetie. I hope you still adore your mother, despite what you perceive as her faults. As for me, I'm proud my daughter has the courage to accept who she is. There is a nice mushroom and onion galette in the fridge, and a rather nice bottle of Pinot from Oregon. Much better than the California Pinot, don't you think? I spent the week wrestling with the issue. Seriously, how does one deal with a homicidal mother? I could turn her in, but that comes with a whole new set of problems that I didn't want to deal with. I could ask her to stop, but I'd bet my K.D. Lang album collection that she wouldn't. I could help her, but the thought turned my stomach. Or I could just accept my mom the way she is. Easier said than done. I'm famished, dear. Care to grab lunch? Mom had been back 5 minutes, and as far as I can tell, she took several hits of speed on the flight home. Since I was in the process of trying to accept my mom as she was, I accepted the invitation. Maybe being around her more would ease my unease, settle my unsettled mind. The local pastry shop was her choice, oddly enough. I say oddly enough because she always complained about the line servers. They have the best tea, sweetie, and a kouign-amann that simply sends one's tongue to nirvana. I'll order 2 for us, along with a pot of tea. What I wanted was a Coke and a Danish. Sure thing, Mom. The line wasn't long, so we zipped through, laden with our treasures. Mom picked a spot against the wall, just in case a miscreant came in and started a brouhaha. Mom had a strategy for everything, and a gun. You just want to shoot somebody, don't you? Sarcasm isn't my usual mode of interacting with my mom. Desperate pleading was my game. Not until I finished my tea and pastry. Mom graced me with another crocodile smile. Nice. Very cultured. The girls behind the counter are extra surly today, dear. They're always a little ungracious, though. Is that why you told them to smile more and to ponder their assuredly bleak futures less? Obviously, Mom said, after swallowing her pastry and taking a sip of tea. She would never speak with food in her mouth. Hell, she wouldn't even nod with food in her mouth. My mom was a motivational speaker who had written 2 bestsellers, A Heaping Helping of Self-Help and A Second Helping of Self-Help. I never understood why people shelled out big bucks for her books and even more money to attend one of her speaking events. Her advice was pablum, her sayings trite. Because of this, though, she felt it was her right, no, her obligation, to offer advice to all and sundry. Poisoning would be too good for them. Don't be flip, dear. Or electrocution. We could call it the juice of justice. Okay, Mom was going to play the game, outdo me with sarcasm. I gave it up. Why did you kill the woman in the living room? I had avoided this question. A cold hand squeezed my heart, a dark dread that the answer would confirm my mom as an irredeemable monster enveloped me. She profited from charities raising money for sick kids. Quite clever, actually. She ran the funds through several shell corporations, but in the end, the money ended up in an account in Barbados. And I persuaded her to transfer the ill-gotten gains to the proper charities. Persuaded? You would be amazed at what one can do with a lit cigarette and a serrated knife. God, Mom. More tea, dear? The myriad philosophers that I had read didn't help. The addition by subtraction philosophy that Mom purported as rationalization for her murderous ways didn't help. All I could think of was that the hands that soothed me as a youngster now wielded knives and cigarettes. I finally concluded that Mom's ways were another expression of love, a new and, to her, improved way to do what she could for her fellow humans before the long sleep. As for me, I'll take a more traditional approach and avoid murdering people, and I told my mom this. Never say never, dear. Mom's advice on things came with platitudes. I'll never stop loving you, Mom. She smiled, nodding her head at my cleverness. You mean you'll always love me? Shut up, Mom. Okay, dear, but come, give your mother a hug. Put out the cigarette first. Because she loved me, she put out the cigarette